Hello, hello. I think we're live. I think we're available. Everybody say hi.
Hi, good morning.
All right.
Hello, everybody.
Hopefully, you guys can hear us. Please let us know in the chat if you can hear us. It's exciting to be here. We're going to be talking about WoTCon. We're going to be talking about the deleted scenes and maybe Wheel of Time just a little bit. But before we get too deep into it, let's talk about who's here with us. So, I had the pleasure of meeting all three of you in person at WoTCon last weekend. I've known Chad online for a couple years now, but Chad, let's start with you. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us who you are?
Sure. Like I said, down here at the bottom of the box, my name's Chad Trent. A lot of people probably know me as the Spare of Time. I'm an artist, and the past two and a half years, I've been doing Wheel of Time specific art, as I've been teaching myself digital art. So you guys have probably seen a lot of that out there, and if you haven't, come check me out on Twitter. That's where you'll find me mostly. I'm also on Instagram. And then I also have a website, thespareoftime.com. I'm out there. You guys can find me.
I love that your logo is literally the wheel of time, like a spare tire. It's the wheel of time has gone flat. You're in need of a spare. That's great.
Right.
It's a great logo. Awesome.
Thank you.
And Darian, who are you?
Hi, so I'm actually Chad's son, and this was my first JordanCon. I've been reading the books for a long time, but I actually took a long break, and coming to the JordanCon.
You mean
really,
WoTCon, right?
I do mean WhatCon, yeah. Thanks, sorry. But yeah, I know we'll go into it, but it was a really phenomenal experience, and I'm definitely planning on picking it back up. And I'm helping right now. Actually, we're starting to revamp the website, and I'm working a lot with the art page that we were just talking about.
Awesome. And Charisse.
So I'm Charisse. It was my first WalkCon as well. Never been to any other Wheel of Time convention, although I've been a fan of the books for a couple of years now. So great experience for me. I kind of got peer pressured into getting Twitter, so I'm on Twitter of Time now. So you can follow me there, and also on IG at It's Reese's.
Nice. Yeah, the reason that I wanted to invite you three in particular is because we had some really awesome conversations at WotCon. I had the pleasure of going to JordanCon earlier this year, but that was my first Wheel of Time convention. And did all three of you say this was your first convention, like Wheel of Time related convention? Is that what I heard? Or Chad, no, you went to JordanCon before, right? But I didn't get to meet you this year. Yeah. Cool. But, since WotCon was the first of its kind, it was all of our first WotCon, right? Which is...
Absolutely.
It was an awesome experience. And we'll talk about that a little bit. I know some of the people in chat were there. Some of the people were there virtually, like Trian, and I see Nils is here. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces. Glenn, the geeky hippie. I'm so thankful that he's moderating today on chat. But yeah, I'm guessing a lot of you have either followed WotCon to some degree. If you have a virtual pass, you can actually watch all of the panels, which I would highly recommend, including you can watch the main session panel where they showed the 2 deleted scenes. One of those deleted scenes from season 1 was released to the public, but one has not yet been released. So if you want to go and watch that, I'm pretty sure they've reopened virtual passes. You can go to wotcon.com and you can actually watch those panels, which I've actually been doing that this week. I've been going back and watching some of the panels that I missed. Because I couldn't be at every panel at once, which I wanted to be. I wanted to show really quickly some of this awesome artwork that I got from the Spare of Time. Hopefully you guys can see that. I love this one. I love the silhouette of Matt on the horse. I think that's really cool. And I bought a few of these, and you snuck in a few that I didn't buy. So thank you for that. Look at this one.
Terrible mistake.
What a mistake. Isn't that awesome? I love that. It's Hopper hopping away, flying away. Love that. Let's see. This one's kind of a famous one. I feel like this one's been around a bit, hasn't it? I don't know. There's a bit of a reflection on there, but it's you want to explain that one, Chad?
That's So You Want Stories is what I call that one. Yeah, and that's basically the reunion with after they get split up. Tom teaches them some skills, and then they basically see him entertaining the Richie Rich crowd in that one manner. And let's see. Oh, so that's
He's wearing
all.
the traditional gaming cloak there.
Yeah, you've got the patch. What I love too is that you're using the actual actor Alexander Willam from
Yeah,
the show, but
I
you've made him look like Book Tom, which I appreciate.
yeah, I tried. Yes, I tried. That's what I've been trying to do really ever since the table announcement, right? I've been practicing portrait studies so I could try to mix the characters, the book and the actors together, and try to find like a happy medium for myself and for like fans. Like so like in pictures of land, you'll see the water cloak. Because I know people miss it, and
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
it's also really challenging. It's really challenging to try and draw and paint that.
Oh,
So
for
I
sure.
kind of like,
Yeah, how do you do it? This is the other one that I hope people can see this. I love this one. It's so pretty.
Oh my God, I kept looking at that one
This
at
is-
WoTCon. It's gorgeous.
What do you call
Wayne-
this one?
Love it.
Gwen's first channel.
It's Wayne's first channel. I love that. It's so pretty. Love the colors in that one. So yeah, check out thespareoftime.com and follow the Spare of Time on Twitter, and just great guy. We talked a lot about content creation, sort of on Twitter DMs and stuff over the years, and it was a pleasure to meet you and Darian, your son, and to kind of see that excitement at WoTCon. So speaking of WoTCon, you guys were there in a slightly different capacity than many of us. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Darian? What were you guys doing there at the convention? You had a special table.
Yeah. Yeah, so we were actually invited out to be vendors. Excuse me 1 second, sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
We were invited out. I'm gonna clear my throat. Actually, if you could just move to the next question, I'll come back.
Yeah, no problem. Chad, well, okay, so you guys were there as vendors. You had like a vendor table there, and you were selling and sharing some of your artwork and some t-shirts and stuff. I know, by the way, when we talked about doing this live stream, they were like, we don't really want to make this into a thing about us and our artwork. And I love, one of the things I love doing on my channel is praising and lifting other content creators in the community, because there are so many incredibly talented people in this community, and it's not a competition. Like, I'm not trying to get ahead of anybody. I mean, I would love to have more subscribers than everybody, but I would love if, I've said this many times, a rising tide lifts all boats. And that's what we're trying to do here, right? Is to try to lift each other. So I know it's a little bit weird doing like a self-promotion thing, but hey, this is my show and I'm making you guys do it. So Chad, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
About the vending experience?
Yeah. How did that go?
It was excellent, really. It being our first like physical selling presence, we were definitely not prepared. It was a little bit short notice too, and that's because it's a first con. And we just completely rolled with it, and and we were actually, even though I tend to be pretty kind of critical, we walked away being very pleased with the result. Like, we wound up making it look really well. We had great fan interaction. We met a lot of people and had a great time. We had a lot of really long, in-depth conversations with some people about different pieces of artwork that they were really into, which was really cool. Even Matt Hatch stopped by. It was kind of funny. He stopped by. He's like, "Hey man, I'm so sorry. It's taking me so long to come by." And then, like, as soon as he finished that sentence, 2 fans came up. "Hey, can we get a selfie real quick?"
Yeah, of course.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And they started taking a selfie, and it was over with from there. Like, they were there for like 30 more minutes, and then he had to go. But it was pretty fun. We had a great time. It was a really good experience. I told Darren before we left, if we sell 1 or 2 pieces and meet a whole bunch of people, then that's a success. Like, and we sold a lot more than just 1 or 2 pieces, which is cool too, obviously. But
awesome.
Yeah, meeting people and sharing what you do is probably the best thing, right? Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, it really is kind of.
Yeah, it's fun. It's definitely fun to meet people. And you mentioned Matt showing up, and then that was my interactions with Matt at the convention were, "Hey, he's good to see you. Sorry I haven't chatted," and then running off to talk to somebody else. That was basically, I think that happened like 3 times a day.
Like a
right? Because he was constantly trying to meet people, and and I was constantly talking to different people, and we never really got to just sit and talk, which is fine. That's part of the fun of it. So, Charisse, do you want to talk about what was that like, just meeting people and people online, but also just other fans? What was that like for you?
It was really great because it was actually, I guess, the first time I was in person with people who know what the hell I'm talking about.
Yes.
And so that was a great experience. My fiance came with me and he's a book newbie. We watched the first season together and he liked it and he picked up the book. So he was on book 2 while we were there, and everyone was really great about not spoiling him. Like they'd be like, "Oh, he's on book. Okay, so let's just not talk about the thing like that." Which was really great. And he had a great experience too. Like he came back and I think he got up to like chapter 25, like that in the book, because it was just like the whole fandom, everything was just it was a vibe.
Yeah, it really was, wasn't it? It's just
Vibe.
this, I love that people from all different parts of life, different countries, different political backgrounds, everything, it does none of that matters when we get together at these conventions, because we all share the love of one thing and everything else is secondary to that. And so it's just like a great time all around, isn't it? My wife came along with me too this time, and she's read the first 8 or 9 books or so over the years. Like we've been married almost 20 years, and I've been trying to get her to read these since we first met, and so she's sort of on and off read a lot of them, but she doesn't remember a lot of the details. And I'll tell you, one of the highlights for her at the convention, it's totally fine. Hey, we got pets. That's the nature.
Yeah.
My cats keep trying to get in behind me. So
My cats are napping, thankfully.
oh, that's nice. So one of the highlights for me and for my wife was listening to Michael Kramer and Kate Redding do their readings of chapters from the books. And the first night they did like a VIP dinner, and I don't think that the convention anticipated that so many people would get the VIP pass. So the VIP dinner was more than half of the convention goers. There were a lot of people there, and they read an iconic scene from Knife of Dreams. I won't get too much into spoilers for that, but if you know what scene I'm talking about, it was a great scene about writing to Tarman Gaidon. And boy, there were a lot of misty eyes in that crowd. And then, but my wife was kind of like, I don't get it, because she hadn't read that far, and she was like, But then the next night, everybody had a dinner together, and Michael or maybe it was the next morning. Was it I think it was the main session.
It was the morning.
That's right. And they did a reading of the classic Tellings of the Wheel, when Moraine in the first book talks about weep for Manetheren. And I don't know, there was hardly a dry eye in the room hearing that. And the second that chapter finished, my wife went and downloaded the first book audiobook again and started listening. And now she's like halfway through the first book again. It really caught her attention and got her excited again. Darian, what were some of the highlights for you at the convention?
Definitely. So actually, right off the bat, I would say I ran into one of my highlights. We had just gotten in I had just driven 4 hours to go meet with Chad, and then we drove from 4 hours more to go to Columbus, or just outside of Columbus. And so, we were beat, and, coming into it, I really didn't know what to expect. In 2007, when I was reading these books, the fandom was pretty different. And I just didn't know what to expect. And I got in, and even though the con was starting the next day, people were already gathered in the atrium, and they recognized us as Wheel of Time fans, and they were immediately like, "Get over here. Are you kidding me? Come on, come talk to us," And my heart was so full immediately at just how welcoming everybody would be to somebody walking in the door, And that's how it felt all the way through. Whether you were on your third book or your 8th reading, people would celebrate the fandom itself and the community itself. And I would say that was just a through line, through my entire experience. Of course, there were like a number of moments that I shared with people. I made some fast friends, people that I'm still talking to, and I'll probably continue to talk to. And, just a little more personally at the vendor station, having those really cool conversations that we all have, where you kind of get shivers for a moment, and then you're like, oh, wow, that's your perspective, or, oh, wow, you see it the way I do. And seeing a few folks do that while we're talking and connect with the art, it made it feel like we were doing more of a service, than just a transactional thing. Like, people are looking for these connections, and people are looking for representations of their vision from the book. and it was really cool. It was really cool. I think that would probably be my highlight.
Awesome. I love that. That's great. Cool. Well, let's see. Any panels that you guys were able to attend that you enjoyed? Anyone want to speak to that?
Yeah, so Kai, my fiance, and I mostly went to the 5 Minutes in Heaven for like adding 5 minutes to the show because I didn't want to go to like, some spoiler heavy ones like, why do we hate Gowan? He wanted to go in there and I was like, we're not going in there. And I had a lot of fun in there because the show is something I've been thinking about a lot, and reconciling certain things with what we know for the metaphysics and the lore of the books and trying to make certain things make sense. And I found that to be really, really fun. And those are the panels I usually commented on and things like that. So had a great time on those type of panels.
Yeah, I love those too. I went, so the 5 Minutes in Heaven, the concept of those panels, for those who might not know, is you're not allowed to change what exists in the episodes. But if Amazon gives you 5 extra minutes of runtime for the episodes, what would you add? And so it was an interesting panel discussion and a lot of audience participation, which I really liked about those panels, where people were just giving their ideas like, oh, I would add 30 seconds here. Or I would, someone was like, well, I would just add 5 minutes of Land's butt in episode 1, stuff like that. Like, that was really fun. And I got to be on the episodes 5 and 6, 5 Minutes in Heaven panel. And it's tough. It's tough to decide what to add because, whether or not you love the episodes as they are, they're built thematically to sort of fit together, especially the middle episodes. I would argue that the first and last episodes of the season could have used extra time and they were a little bit jumbled. But for sure, those middle episodes were pretty tightly put together and they had sort of like pretty thematic elements. For example, episode 5 starts and ends with a funeral. And you can tell that they're intentionally sort of building that entire episode to make you think about that and to think about the consequences of this warder bond and all of the interesting things that go along with that. And to me, it was really quite tightly put together. And then episode 6, that one's all about Moraine and her relationship with Swan and goings on in the tower and some of the, intrigue that's going on there. And again, pretty tightly put together, aside from the awkward ending with Barney Harris leaving and them being like, Matt, where are you going? As the gate closes, that was a little weird, but
yeah.
So, anyway, it's just talking about like, what would we add? That was a really fun thought experiment for me. And I'm sad that I didn't get to go to the episode 7 and 8 panel for that because
it was great.
I'm guessing that was one of the most interesting ones.
So in that one, I was saying my theory for our favorite thing, Maureens Tell.
Oh, yeah. Let's hear it.
So my theory was, well, when I thought about it, I was saying, what is Nynaeve good at that Lan wouldn't necessarily be good at? And so the main thing, I guess, when it would come to something like that would be like herbalism, right? So I thought maybe there's something that Moraine wears or something that has a reaction to like with the plants around or whatever. And Lan, although he's a good tracker, that wouldn't be something he would pay attention to. But Nynaeve, that would be something that she would pay attention to. And then it makes the tell make sense. I don't know.
It's really good.
I love that idea. And actually, one of the reasons I wanted to invite you here is because we sat down for lunch together, and we had this conversation about Nynaeve's tell. And of all the things in season 1, that was probably one of my least favorite little details, was the whole like, Lan has known Moraine for 20 plus years and he doesn't know all of her tells when tracking through the wilderness. Like, to me, that was really silly. And Nynaeve picked up on it. And so I love this idea that maybe, Moraine wears a perfume or a something that has a reaction with a plant or something that Nynaeve wouldn't understand, but Lan wouldn't understand, but Nynaeve would. I'd love that concept. That's my headcanon now, for sure. Like, that's how it has to be. Chad, did you want to say something? Yeah,
I did. So I completely forgot. Remember that I made like a silly meme about that. Shortly right after the show. I think, and it's Moraine scratching her initials, hers and Suwan's initials, basically in every time they stop on a tree, and that's the tell.
Imagine.
But it's like a real subtle, you know what I mean? Like, you have to really be looking for it. But I actually really do like her theory. Like, I could easily see something as simple as like that long blue cloak, basically knocking some pollen off of certain flower stems that, you know, that only an herbalist would be noticing, or be like, like,
Yeah.
Right.
it makes sense that maybe it does make like there is a lot that actually goes into tracking it. And it makes sense that, you know, even, you know, Land being like an expert tracker, like you can be an expert in anything and still have areas of weakness or ignorance, like things that you still need to learn. So
Yeah, and to be
we
fair,
probably couldn't.
no, you're right. And to be fair, that's one of the things that I think shines about those episodes and those types of details is the way that Lan and Nynaeve complement each other. The fact that Lan does kind of think, you know, he says right when he first meets her, you think you know this world, you know nothing. And come to find out, he's learning from her. I do like that idea that Lan realizes she isn't just some simple village bumpkin or sheep herder, as I wish he would have called Rand one time in season
Just
one.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. People want me to say a certain word in the chat. It's fine. They've bullied others into saying it. I'll just get it over with. Oh, was my mic muted? Whoops, sorry about that. I apologize.
Not to catch the next show.
So you'll just have to catch the next one, yeah. All right, so I did say it. It's not my
like
fault.
and subscribe
Yeah,
and
yeah.
do the YouTube thing. Maybe he'll say
Right,
it.
yeah.
Will fix itself.
The word's for Patreon. Patreon. You got to subscribe to Patreon to get the word.
That's right. When we get to 3,000 patrons. Okay. No, I will. I might just say it by the end. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay, so this is the thing. Once I get started talking about the show, I can't stop. So, and I do want to talk about the deleted scenes. Oh, hey, look, we've got some porn bots in the chat. That's exciting. Glenn, if you don't mind taking care of those, that would be great. Good old YouTube and their porn bots.
That sign that you made it, though. Like,
yeah, that's right.
They don't send in the porn bots until you actually start making some headway. So good for you.
Yeah, thanks, I guess.
Oh, stop.
All right, so someone asks, "What the f is blank rock all about?" Anyway, I'm not going to say it.
Right. Nice try.
If you know, you know. No, there's the Threefold Talk, which is Malkier Talk's live stream that they do weekly. It's a little inside joke, and whenever Lan's butt is shown, they say it because there is a rock that has a crack in it that looks like a butt. So that's the joke there. And they actually got one of those like buttons that you can push that plays audio, and they got a recording of Matt saying it, and they press the button, and it's ridiculous. It's a big inside joke for what they call foldies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's see here. I want to talk about deleted scenes, but any other panels or highlights from WoTCon? I mean, I guess I want to talk a little bit about my experience, but I talk a lot. So anyone else want to talk about that for a bit?
I want to talk about Delusions of Grandal being the best dancer around. She was so much fun on the dance floor during our dance party, and gotta shout out DJ Nibbles.
Yes.
For giving us a great dance party, but Delusions of Grandal was the best.
So my experience with her, I've known her online for a while because she's so supportive of so many people online. She's often in the live chat, just a great person all around. I was on her podcast that was short-lived with one of her friends for a bit. She's great. But what I didn't know about her is how extroverted she is in person. And, you know, a lot of us at WoTCon are introverted people, at least to some degree. I would consider myself to be more extroverted at WoTCon than I normally am in real life because I was meeting people and having a great time nerding out, right? But I got to tell you, at JordanCon, she was the life of the party during the karaoke and dances and stuff. And her extroversion was so intense that it sucked my energy away. And I had to leave the room a little bit. And she came to me later and she's like, "I know I'm a vampire. I'm sorry about that." I just thought that was really funny. But man, it is so fun to just see her having a good time and getting people riled up and dancing, and yeah, I love that.
Every time I saw her after hours, so after the panels and after all that, literally she was on a chair dancing all 3 nights.
Yeah.
I would walk into the main area and then there she would be dancing on a chair. I'm like, the second day, I just put my arms up. I was like, "What?" And she saw everyone kind of laughed. They knew exactly what I was talking about. Like, you are again. And the third, I'm like, "Do you leave the chair?" Oh no, the next morning. So the final morning, I saw her in the morning. I was like, "Oh, Brenda, I didn't even recognize you without the chair." And then she started laughing, and you know,
That's great. Another thing she does is she doesn't just hug people; she bear tackles people. She'll hug you and almost knock you over, you know. And I'm never prepared for that. But anyway, just that's so. But that again, that's one of the great things. And speaking of other cool people that we met at the convention, Maria Simmons was there, Robert Jordan's assistant, and she came up to me and she was like, "Are you Lauren?" And I was like, "Are you kidding? You know my name?" Like that was the most exciting thing for me. Now she probably asked somebody like, "Hey, who's that guy over there?" or something. But still, that was quite an ego boost for me, just her knowing my name. And she was a delight. Michael and Kate Redding, I know we talked a little bit about their readings. I didn't want to like bother them because to me they were the celebrities. They were there as the guests of honor, and I didn't want to like take their time, but I did want to just like shake their hands and say, "Hey, I'm so thankful for what you've done." You know, so that's what I did. I walked up to him and I was like, "I love what you did." And then Kate just proceeded to talk to me for like 15 minutes. And she did that more than once. Did any of you, I know, Chad, I think you said you had some experiences talking with Kate.
I had a couple. So I'm going to dip back into the panel discussion just for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was on a panel with Beth and Brad, and we talked about like show theories and everything, like what we thought about what would happen next. But that's really, it was awesome. It was really awesome. Everything, but it has nothing to do with the Kate and Michael thing. So I'm gonna put that to the side.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah.
The second panel was supposed to be the content panel, content creator panel that I was supposed to be on the last panel, and I wound up showing up like 5 or 10 minutes late because I was having a really great like hour plus talk with both of them outside in the non-smoking area. And Derry came right to me. He's like, "Hey, are you supposed to be on a panel?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, man. I gotta let you guys go." I'm like, "What time is it?" And he's like, basically,
You're
5
late.
minutes past the time you're supposed to start. I was like,
After.
and then I wanted to let everybody. First of all, like there was a ton of great panelists up there, and there was not enough room for me to be up there anyway. So it was perfectly fine. It was perfectly fine. I figured they're gonna be okay. I think I even kind of jokingly told Darian, I'm like, I'm pretty sure they're going to be all right without me. Like, they're going to make this thing work somehow. But I was also kind of saying, like, I felt bad about not being there. You know what I mean? I really felt bad about being late. I like being on time for stuff. But, like, if you have to trade off being on a panel for having an hour plus conversation with those two, sorry, panelists.
Fair.
Like, it was a decent, unfortunate trade. But, yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
And I got another story, but I'll save that.
Yeah, you can say that. You can say that for the end. What about you, Darian? Did you have any experiences talking to Michael and Kate or any other panel related stuff that you want to talk about?
I didn't really get a chance to talk to Michael and Kate much, but I did get to sample a lot of their work while I was there. I wasn't, like I said, because it's my first time and like our first front-facing vendor, I really wanted to stay at the booth and get a feel for the first few days of the flow as people kind of went into the events and then got out. So I only attended a handful of panels, but all of them, I'll say, they were really cool. They were smaller rooms, and you had some folks who are really big in the community who have these channels like you do that we all look up to, and they made sure to like really interact with the guests that were there and really talk to the crowd. And there was a funny moment actually when we were wrapping up, and I remember this was a panel that Chad and Wolf Brother. And it was a really cool panel, and we got to the end, and we could hear the group in the next room over laughing really loudly. And Wilfred was like, all right, so listen, this is going really great, but what I need everybody to do real quick is stop what you're doing and just clap and laugh as loud as you can. And so we did, and then almost immediately they did the same thing back, and we did it too. So like they recognized that we were doing it, and then it just became a back and forth, and it was like a spontaneous game. And that that little interaction is so telling of like a lot of my interactions at WoTCon, and a lot of the playfulness and mutual support, it was all the way throughout.
Awesome. Thank you. Sorry, I saw the Dusty Will is in the chat. He said, "Hey all, WoTCon was something special. The entire Dusty Will family is coming next year." So
Nice.
let's talk about that. You guys planning on going again?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't even make the decision. My fiance, who was on book 2, said, yeah, we're coming back next year.
Awesome. That's great to
Awesome.
hear. My concern is that I feel like I might have to pick between JordanCon or WoTCon. And I was talking to my wife about this, and she's like, "It's got to be WoTCon, right? I mean, it's more focused on Wheel of Time, and as awesome as JordanCon is, I'm still hoping to do both. But there's a possibility I'll have to choose, and I think WoTCon is really, I don't know, it's something about the concentration of Wheel of Time fandom that I just really really loved. And hey, hearing the Dusty Will's whole family's coming, that's awesome. By the way, speaking of Matt, he was great as the MC, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that great? He did things so smooth, and I loved him playing back and forth with Rakapa Sadai in some of the big panels. Some of that was just so funny and just a great time. So if you haven't seen all the panels, at least especially the main sessions, I think the virtual pass is pretty cheap, and you can go in and watch those on wotcon.com. I don't think they're going to be there forever, so and I'm sure that any virtual tickets that you purchase will only help next year. So, please go and do that if you haven't. Okay, Michael and Kate. The one thing I wanted to say about them is I had multiple conversations with them, and they were up later than I was every night. Like I would go to bed, and they were still just chatting with people and drinking and having a great time. And I thought Kate was a bit of a partier. It was kind of fun to see that, wasn't she? But yeah, she would just converse with us. I think what was interesting to me was seeing them react to the love from the fandom. It was almost like they didn't expect it, which surprised me because they've been doing this for 20 plus years, almost 30 years, right? And this was their first ever live convention. They've done live streams. They were at SpoilerCon on a panel, I think, last year. They've done different like remote panels, but I just don't think they were expecting the love that they got. And so it was kind of fun to see them kind of glowing the whole time, right? They just seem to really enjoy talking to people. And then they also, we need to talk about their Books for Prisoners charity really quickly.
I'm glad that you brought that up.
One of the things that Michael and Kate do for fans, which is awesome, I've made use of this. I got them to record something for a video of mine once. You can donate money to Books for Prisoners, or is it Books to Prisoners? I better double check that. And Glenn, maybe if you could post a link to that in the chat, that would be good. But anyway, in Books to Prisoners, or Books for Prisoners, basically money donated helps people in prison. And, they said one of their experiences was that a lot of people in prison don't have a lot to do. They spend a lot of time reading books and becoming educated. And many of them connected to the Wheel of Time while serving time. And I think that's really neat that they have met so many people over the years who have been inspired by their work and by Robert Jordan's work. And so I think it's just a great charity. And anytime you donate a certain amount, they will record a message for you. And I think they had like a WoTCon rate for people. So if you donated and showed them the receipt at WoTCon, they would like record your voicemail or a message or something like that. So a lot of people I saw them pulling them aside in the hallway and getting them to record something. And I thought that was really cool. So, be sure to donate to that if you can. Chad, did you want to say something?
I was just gonna say, I was just gonna back up what you were saying. Like, they were extremely gracious with their time. I kind of felt the same kind of way that, that they would be, even accidentally kind of, bougie or whatever, right? For for being so well known. Because I mean, they are. I mean, whether they feel that way or not, like they are like mini legends.
Right.
When it comes to this fandom. Some people haven't even read the books; they've only listened, to their voices. And I don't get starstruck or anything really for the most part, but hearing them talk, like being engaged in anything and hearing them talk, automatically this thing just clicks because you listen to hours and hours of these two people's voices or variations of their voices, right? Because they're great at changing their voices a little bit, but
right.
It is kind of like surreal. It is surreal for to actually see them or just hear them talk and know that, and that's Moraine, that's Egwene, that's Lan, that's that's all those characters in those two people.
Yeah.
They couldn't be more like down to earth, and just really, and I mean, I guess I shouldn't say surprisingly, but like both really intelligent people. You know what I mean? Like they're just great. Both of them are just great people, man. I spent a lot of time off and on. And yeah, I'm sure it wasn't just me and you. Like they were, like I said, they were super gracious with their time.
Totally.
And yeah, I made sure they knew that we were all appreciative, which they knew.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I mean, just awesome people. And we shouldn't forget Daniel Green was also a guest of honor. And Daniel Green is obviously an incredible influence, especially in the Wheel of Time community. He's probably single-handedly brought more people into the Wheel of Time than any other content creator that I know of. And so got a shout out to him. He was great too. I know he had to leave a little bit early, but the few times that I was able to interact with him, he was also very gracious, and he knew who I was, which was exciting. And he was like, he called me out a few times during panels and stuff, which I really appreciated. So it was just all around just a really awesome experience. Okay.
Yeah.
We've been talking about WoTCon for 40 minutes. I hope people who weren't there don't feel too much FOMO. You can pretty much see all the panels, and there's always next year, right? We love meeting people. I do want to shout out one other person really quick. And this guy's name was I'm going to get his name wrong. Holger, I want to say. He had a European accent, but he lives in California.
The guy we were sitting at
right
with at lunch.
Yeah, we were sitting with him at lunch.
He
had some amazing insights into the show. He had some really great theories. He's one of those people who I felt like I was on the same wavelength with, because he was explaining why they did things in the show to make sense, similar to your like herb theory. He had some really interesting thoughts that I really liked. But one of the things he did was he did a full 3D printed model of the Wine Spring Inn set from the TV show. And I don't know if you guys got to see that in person. I should have had some pictures to show. I'll post some pictures on Twitter. But what a cool thing. And it was a little bit another ego boost for me, because he used my Wine Spring Inn map that I built in one of my videos as reference, in part, to build the Wine Spring Inn model that he did, which was so cool to see. And it was extremely detailed, and he had it looking just perfectly to scale. And anyway, shout out to Holger for his amazing. He did that just for fun. It's not like that's something he can sell. He did that as like a hobby project, and I think he spent weeks 3D printing that thing and trying to figure out how to modularly put it together and everything. So anyway, just that was the kind of stuff we saw at the con the whole time. It was just cool people with cool ideas. People had fun little pins that they had custom made, and anyway, just an awesome time. Okay, let's talk about the deleted scenes, and I'm going to attempt to share this. I hope that this works. Oops. I'm going to try to move the stream over here, and then I'm going to try to share this. Okay, so people should be able to see that. I'll move the live chat out of the way. And then for you guys, I got to share my screen so that you can see this as well. Okay, so are you guys able to see the slideshow there?
Yeah.
Indeed.
Awesome. All right, so we basically got 2 deleted scenes shown to us during the final thing, whatever, the final main panel, right? It was kind of like the closing ceremonies, right? And one of them has been released to the public, and that's the one that I'm showing here. So I want to talk through this, and if you guys have any thoughts on any of the details that are shown here or how it fits in with the show, please, by all means, let's talk about it. And then the other one we cannot show. I don't have access to the actual video, but it's not something that we could show anyway because it hasn't been released to the public. But I have some screenshots from the original episode, and we can kind of talk a little bit through how that scene worked. So this is the opening scene. I think this is basically the same as how the scene starts in the final cut of the episode. Then we cut to this scene of the women's circle. You can see Nynaeve here and Egwene here walking through the mountains of mist or somewhere near the 2 rivers. This was also in the show. This was a new shot. So the camera sort of pans and we get to see Egwene and Nynaeve, and you can see that Egwene has unbraided hair as the women's circle walks. I love this shot. So what's interesting to me about this shot is obviously you have the light coming down. I think this scene was really supposed to visually represent Saidar, the female half of the one power. I think it was supposed to be very bright and beautiful with lots of light coming in. Does this scene remind you of anything from the finale? I feel
Yeah.
like
Well, like
pop
the eye of the
quiz.
world.
Yeah. Yeah, the eye of the world, right? Like to me, this feels very much like it's supposed to mirror the eye of the world. In the eye of the world, it's a pit. It's deep down in the ground, but it's all decayed and rotted, and there isn't really any light. And I love that visual contrast. This is one of the things I wish they had kept in, just because of the visual sort of parallels, right? But they are going. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to jump in real quick. To me, this also symbolizes a full moon, which is another association with, women's spiritual power and women's cycles, like women in general.
Oh, that's good. Great
There's
point.
a lot. So I've studied a lot of like symbols and their meaning, but a lot of it comes through my artwork. But so like there's a bunch of stuff. We'll have a whole other show if you want. There are tons of symbols they've purposely placed in these videos that I don't think a lot of people are catching, because they are really subtle and made just for artistic. And I appreciate, because there are tons of things in my pictures that people don't notice too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Go ahead,
Darren. What were you gonna say?
I think that these symbols and everything, like, I want to see the whole thing before we start commenting too much on it. But I know some of the criticisms about like how some of the symbols would be lost or confusing at first. But I think things like that really add to the rewatchability of that. But as you get later into the seasons and you start understanding, as the pattern becomes more clear to you, you can kind of go back and see how it was revealing itself from the very beginning.
I was thinking the same type of thing, because one of the things about the book series itself that people love, you reread it because you reread it and then you pick up on all these things you missed. And I think, to me, that's where the show excels at keeping to the heart and the spine of the books, that those like little hidden things, those things that are kind of in plain sight that make sense to you only when you rewatch it.
Absolutely. I love that. And, I think it's important, I get a lot of criticism online from people who they live to hate the show. Right. And so I often get kind of defensive a little bit about that. But I have to say, none of us are saying the show was perfect. At least I'm not. I can't speak for you guys. The show had its flaws. Absolutely. But I think a lot of these things, as Darian mentioned, kind of go over people's heads on the first watch, and myself included. Like, there's a lot of visual symmetry that I've noticed only on rewatch as I'm intentionally trying to pick these or unravel these videos, right? That's like what I try to do. And so I'm like, oh, look what they try to do here. And in my opinion, their intent has become more obvious to me. I wouldn't say that they hit the nail on the head perfectly. Like, there's a lot of things for me that I can see what they were trying to go for, and unfortunately it wasn't very clear. And so to me, scenes like this would have helped, in my opinion, to kind of fill in some of those gaps. Yeah, go ahead.
We got a statement from chat. Anas pointed out that let me find this really quick. That it's an old historical site, and it's actually called Amon's Hole.
Oh wow, is that true?
What? Yes, that's why I said, I'm like, I think I said the same thing. Like, is that true? LOL. Like, is that real? Like, 'cause that's awesome. I love everything about that.
I mean, I honestly hope that's a joke, because that's hilarious. But also, if that's true, even better.
That would be great.
Amon's Hole. I'm gonna have to look that one up now. Okay, so this is another awesome visual metaphor. Clearly, we're seeing the symbol of Saidar, the female half of the one power. One of the things that I was saddened by in the first episode was the removing of this shot as well, because we saw this in promotional materials and teasers. And then we do have the flip side of that with the dead sheep or goats that Lan finds in the shape of the Saidin, the male half, the dragon's fang. And the flame of Tarvalon here, to me, it's a perfect symmetry that I'm really sad they removed. But it's great the way that worked. And then we got this shot.
You also see that symbol you're talking about whenever Nynaeve kills the Trolloc, like in the cave scene.
That's right.
The opposite symbol of this you see there. And so that visual symmetry, I think, especially tying it to the cave, that would have been really nice.
Right, I completely agree. Like, to me, it was a missed opportunity. The reason I like this shot is because this makes me think of an eye, the eye of the world. The way
Yeah.
that they're going down into, I feel like they intentionally did this. And as they walk through, you can kind of see, it feels like an eye to me. And actually, this is something I've noticed throughout the entire show. There are a lot of little call outs to eyes, little symbols of eyes throughout different episodes. And again, it's one of those things where I think they were trying to sort of subconsciously tell us the eye of the world was coming without being explicit until later. So anyway, I love that. Okay, now this scene we also saw in some of the teasers and trailers. The way that she swirls her arms makes this also feel like the Flame of Tarvalon, which I just really love that. Also, I mentioned this on the Dusty Wheel. To me, this feels like a baptism. This very much feels like an ordinance of baptism. And, in the religion that I was brought up in, you wear clothing similar to this. They're white clothing that you wear into the baptism. And but what I love about this is there's no one there baptizing her. There isn't some male authority there saying, I baptize you or anything like that. This is all her choice. She is baptizing herself. And to me, that's very powerful for Egwene's character. What do you guys think of this scene?
Besides like the so far the culmination of all the scenes, I also want to remind people if they don't know, like caves are also ancient, like holy places and also symbols of women and spiritual power.
Oh,
So
cool.
like the fact that it takes place in a cave, also everything about this shot kind of reinforces the same kind of spiritual concepts about spiritual power and women in general. A lot of ancient cultures used caves for their spiritual practices.
That's great. I love that.
I was thinking it shows a lot about like Egwene's character. Like we see later on in later episodes where she's like, okay, so what do we have to do when Swan is talking to her? So she's sitting there ready, like, okay, what comes next? I'm ready for it. Like the determination on her face. Like she doesn't know what's gonna happen, but she's ready for whatever it is.
Love that. Yeah.
I like it. Also,
go ahead, Darian.
Thank you. I think it establishes also like Nynaeve in this group as a leader of the women's circle. And then you kind of got touches on that in the rest of the season. I feel like this episode or this scene definitely would have done a lot to like firmly establish that she's a leader not only in her small group but also in the community at large. And it would add to the impact of her being willing to leave that community to find her friends.
Love that. Yeah, that's awesome.
I had one more quick thing to say about that last shot, and a number of shots in the show. A lot of shows you'd be seeing this visual. She wouldn't be crouched down. It would be more gratuitous, right? And to be honest, I appreciate the artistry of in the kind of like the respect of the viewer too, in a way, to not make every shot a gratuitous like nipple shot for no good reason other than viewership. I mean, like I think it's it shows off her form and it's not gratuitous, and I think it's perfect like as it is.
I love that. Well, and we all know that Robert Jordan, pretty much every ordinance, if you can call it an ordinance, every sort of ceremony or ritual that the Aes Sedai or the women go through in the books is almost always accompanied by nudity. And even when like Matt and Rand go to Ruidian, I'll try to keep this a little spoiler light. There are women who are sent to Ruidian without their clothing, while Matt and Rand are not. And I know that maybe Robert Jordan was intending for that not to be sexualized necessarily. I think he was trying to speak to sort of like being born again or something to that nature. But it is a little unfortunate that only the women ever get naked in those situations. And so I absolutely appreciate that they shy away from that in the show. It isn't about their bodies or anything of that nature. And I have to say, to this scene, there's a scene in, I want to say episode 5, when Egwene and Perrin are captured by the White Cloaks, and the White Cloaks take Egwene and they give her this really creepy ritualistic cleansing. They they scrub her down. They're very aggressive about it. She's feeling very violated in that moment. But even then, it wasn't about her body. I think they did a really great job of making it about Egwene's emotional response to it rather than focusing in on her body parts. And I really do
And
appreciate that.
yeah, and to that, I think it is a perfect representation of what the white cloaks are like. Like, yeah, to them, oh no, but we're purifying you, but they're doing it in this way that just makes you have this visceral reaction, and they just can't see it that way. Although everyone else around them is like, this is not
Ew.
cool.
Right, totally. Well, and you know, in that scene when Egwene after she's clean and she's put into the room and Perrin hasn't even been touched other than being tied down. Like they didn't feel the need to clean him of anything. Now, to be fair, the White Cloaks thought Egwene was a channeler, and they didn't think that about Perrin. But then there is that moment when Perrin's sort of wolf nature comes out, and Eamon Valda says something like, "What are you?" I can't remember the exact line, but he says something to the
Yeah.
effect of, "What are you?" And I thought in that moment, the irony is that in a way, Perrin probably needed their cleansing ritual more than Egwene did in their eyes. I'm not saying either of them needed that, but just this idea that Perrin was maybe tainted by the Dark One, and they didn't even realize it. Which, you know, it's just men trying to control women, which is obviously a very big problem, isn't it? Darian, sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, yeah, just in the blind spots that they form by trying to like have this preconceived notion of who needs cleansing and who doesn't, you end up missing out on, you know, somebody who may have actually fit the, you know, he said neither of them actually need to be cleansed. But yeah, because they're kind of perverted preconceived notion of who is clean and who's dirty, they would have missed out on and potentially gotten themselves hurt, you know.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, so there's this little nod that Nynaeve does here. She does a little nod, and then that gives this woman here the permission, so to speak, to pour in the first color. And I love this shot, the light coming in. Now, I don't know for sure, but I feel like this is the same cave that they used later for the set with Logain. I feel like the openings in the cave up above are the exact same openings, but they this part with the water was just built up higher. I'm pretty sure it's the same location, and maybe that's one of the reasons why they chose to remove this scene. I saw somebody do like a screenshot comparing this with one of the behind the scenes clips that we saw at some point with the Logain scene, and they did look like the same cave. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. So then we have looks like green is being poured in, then this woman pours in blue. Someone over here, this looks red, but I think that's supposed to be brown. And then Nynaeve says this: in this world, a woman must be all things. First and foremost, she must be strong. And this harkens back to when she tells Egwene later up on the mountain, the scene that we did see when she pushes her into the water, be strong. Strong as the trees that have stood in this valley for centuries, wise as the earth itself, and willing to use that wisdom to do good. She must have the patience of the stones that have watched the world pass by, and the sense to act when needed, because within her exists the power of creation itself, the ability to give life and take it. Now, what are you guys' thoughts on this dialogue? I know that some people thought this was a little too on the nose. Maybe it was a little too over the top. I think it, again, parallels beautifully with later scenes, like when Nynaeve literally takes the life of the Trolloc in the pool. But what do you guys think?
One of the most obvious things, I think, is which colors are being poured in. As they're saying these, they really obviously kind of go with the mission statements of the Ajas. One thing I do love is that green is poured first in there. So I do love that. And it looked like Nynaeve put in red, which I actually kind of like, because you would think it would be yellow or something. But I like that it looks like she poured in red, because I think that lends more to Leandrin trying to recruit her later on into red, and there being some sort of like false symbology laid for this for her. Like, is she gonna go? Is she not? Is she going to succumb to some sort of like as the wisdom? She's not just a healer, she is for rule and regulation, like the red. So which one will Nynaeve stand for?
I love that, and I have some thoughts about that too. Darian or Chad, anything else about this? What Nynaeve says, or any of these scenes that stood out to you?
I've got something, but I'd like to hear what Darian's got to say.
No, I think that, yeah, the line's great. I was actually just going to say, if anything, like, I mean, I understand the criticisms and everything. I think that maybe just the direct face shot while she's delivering all these lines, maybe it could have been shot a little more efficiently. and maybe that narration happening like while they're pouring a little bit more.
Oh, and to be fair, that is what happened. I just threw the quote on one screen here, but as she says these different things, we see the different colors being poured in. So, as she says something about Earth, we see the green color being poured in.
Yeah, I guess as far I'm just addressing like the criticism at the beginning. If anything, I think that maybe I want to keep the scene and maybe just structure it differently. If somebody had a thing about it being too on the nose or this or that, I feel like it served a really good purpose, and it tied into so many other episodes in the season. And I wish they would have kept it in some capacity. That's all I really have for.
Oh yeah, totally agree. Chad?
Yeah, I was going to say that. So, first of all, as far as it being too on the nose, I think we have to kind of think of these things similar to like POV chapters, like from our deep dive fandom. It's too on the nose because a lot of us already know. For the bulk of the fans who don't know, this is a great non-exposition exposition. This is helping explain things that we already know and have known for a long time, that it has really helped to make things less confusing for new fans and help them connect dots. So it was obvious that those are the 7 Ajas, but even more than that, each color has its own meaning, like non-Wheel of Time related. That's the reason why stop signs are red. You know what I mean? Like every color has a symbol, and the colors also do correlate. Green does symbolize strength outside of the Wheel of Time world. That's why the Hulk is green. And we're talking about like ancient, but this has been around for honestly thousands of years. Like these colors still symbolize certain basic things. It's an elemental
Like subconscious.
Yeah. And with so the last one, red being the color of what's the quote? Birth and like giving life and taking life.
Yeah, women have power of creation itself.
Yeah. I mean, so when you're giving birth, it's a bloody mess. You know what I mean? It's part of the deal. Right. And I just really like that it's still going back to it still kind of highlights women's power, and also spiritual, like a spiritual. It kind of helps create the spiritual setting. Like it kind of reinforces all these things, reinforce the spiritual setting of it.
I completely agree. Go ahead.
The other thing I liked about this was the idea of just how much Aes Sedai culture influences women's culture as a whole in this world, and what they know and don't know. Like I'm pretty sure that the women in the women's circle here don't really know the correlation between this and the Aes Sedai Ajas. And just to even think about how far back that might go, and just what other aspects of women's culture in general in other places, not even just in the Two Rivers, in the wider world of the Wheel of Time, has been sort of inspired by the Aes Sedai and what they do.
Right. Well, and also to think that Manetheren goes back to the Trolloc Wars. The Aes Sedai existed in some form at that time. Manetheren, the queen was an Aes Sedai. Right. I like the idea that some of these things, though maybe twisted or changed to some degree, some of them were passed down and were preserved even as Manetheren was destroyed, right? So, yeah, who knows what other influences. This is one of the things that some people had a problem with in the TV show versus the books is the Two Rivers is literally as far as you can get from the world in a lot of people's minds. And by the world, I mean, the Aes Sedai, politics, kings and queens and all that. Like, they're so sheltered. And while I understand that we lost some of that with the show, they aged up some of the characters a little bit. They already have sexual relationships to some degree. They're more men and women than young teenagers. I think this was a necessary thing to help tell a visual story, and as Darian mentioned, to give us some subconscious sort of subtext to link all of these things together. I don't think that there's time in a show like this to explain every little thing to every character, to talk about every single Aja, for example, or whatever. So to me, this was, frankly, as I've sort of picked this particular scene apart, I've become more and more sad that it was removed from the show. That being said, why do we think it was removed? Let me show this final image. I mean, this was such an iconic moment in the first trailer, and I think a lot of us were very excited to see this, and we're hopeful that it would be in the show. So why do we think that it was removed? What do you think, Charisse?
You know, I think that someone mentioned before, I think that, you know, it's more visually appealing to watch someone get yeeted off of a mountainside. It's fun to watch. It was jarring, you know, for someone who maybe didn't watch the trailer, they'd be like, oh, what's going on here? Like, what's up with these women? I do think that maybe they didn't want to make too many allusions to the Aes Sedai and Saidar, because we know that clearly Egwene floating down the river is a good analogy for, you know, the way you would surrender to Saidar and things like that. So I don't know. And then there's also the possibility that maybe they want to use it for later, a flashback later on for Egwene or something like that. So they could still use it if they want.
Oh, I hope that's true. Although now that they've released it to the public
I
as a
know,
deleted scene,
yeah.
I worry that that may not happen. But yeah, good thoughts.
Yeah, the Dusty Wheel actually on Twitter the other day posed the same question, and it generated a lot of community response. And you know, most people that commented actually wanted to keep it in the river scene, and I fall into that camp as well. But there was one comment that said that they would go so far as to say this shouldn't have been written in the first place, because the Two Rivers folks were not very, like, they said it was too ritualistic for the Two Rivers folks. They're very conservative. You know, they're very you know, they're very you know, they're not as like
Religious.
religious, yeah. But I mean, there are so many things that the Women's Circle do from the Two Rivers that gets touched on, but you never actually see, like listening to the wind and stuff like that in the books. I might be using the wrong term because it's been a long time since I've read them, but
Oh, that's right.
but
No, that's right. Yeah.
thank you. Okay, cool. They definitely do like spiritual things, and so I think that this would have been a great way to, and I do wish they would have done more with like listening to the winds in the show. I wanted to see like what that feels like, what that looks like, and I hope we see more of that. But that's like the number one, I guess, between that and what you mentioned earlier with, you know, using caves a number of times in the show. Maybe they're afraid it would be redundant. But again, just to be clear, I love this scene, and I wish they had kept both.
Yeah, well, and speaking of redundancy, it does put a little bit too much focus in a pilot episode on Egwene to have two different ceremonies just for her. You know, and I think if it comes down to you have to cut one of the two ceremonies, I do think they made the right choice. As Charisse said, pushing her off the cliff, it's more interesting. It's a little bit more action-packed. It's like, oh, what's going on here? We do get to see, you know, and in my opinion, this scene would have come first, and then the next scene would have been them at the top of the cliff with her hair being braided. And a lot of people pointed out, if you look closely at her dress during the scene when she's pushed in, you can see the paint, on her dress. To me, we lose some of the amazing visuals of Saidar and the light and the shadow and some of those color things, but we also do get Egwene being thrown into the river and then learning to surrender, which I think in some ways is more powerful for her character and how she learns to use Saidar throughout the first season and throughout the books, right? So there's one other thing I want to say about this particular shot. And this is foreshadowing for something that happens to Egwene much later, and I'll just leave it at that. But I wonder too if, because she's covered in colors, you know, I wonder if they thought maybe this gives away a little bit too much about her future, you know?
Yeah, I think, and the other thing about that with these colors, not all of them, just the ones that happen to be on her now. And of course, that could just be the way she stood up in there, and it may not have been on purpose, but I'm a Will-O-Time fan, so I'm going to overanalyze it. I felt like these colors are such a good representation of who Egwene is. She does walk that line between here's the rule, here's the regulation, this is my logic, but I also want to heal and I also want to help. So I do love that there's that red, that white, and that yellow on her like that, because it represents so many, like, those aspects of her.
I love that. And my guess is that they put the makeup on first, that the stuff that's in the water didn't actually, you know, latch onto her in this way.
Yeah.
My guess is that that was very much intentional. I love that. Yeah. Any other thoughts about this before we move on?
I was going to say that again, that like the whole on the nose stuff. Again, I think all of us fans that have really, deep dive fans, we kind of need to make sure that we kind of check. We need to kind of keep checking the fact that what we know versus what everybody else knows. And then also the Wheel Time books are full of these, these Easter egg foreshadowing pieces where literally some parts of the first book you're going to find are tipping the hat to later books or the end story.
It's
So
true.
like this actually is in line with the books, and I think it's, I don't remember if it's show 2 or 3. I think it's when we came back from the being able to see the shows a little bit early, the first 3.
Right.
Lauren did too. I believe I made a post saying like how impressed I am that I could see that they're actually designing these shows to be rewatched, just like it seems to me very much like the books were designed to be reread, which is to me is really kind of crazy. You're gonna write that many words and you're designing it to be reread. Like
right.
That's crazy. That's crazy. But I really do think that part of the artistry of making the show is doing their best to really recreate the book experience as in many ways as possible, but also so giving you something fresh and new to watch. And like I said, I would love to be able to talk on that more when we have more time, a different time. But there are a lot of things that if you look at the show with the lens of has it been made to be rewatched, I think you're going to find a lot of new things in there.
I agree. And I think some of the things we feel were plot holes or problems or unexplained things will make more sense in context as we have more seasons of the show. I do believe that. And Rafe said right from the start, we are not adapting the Eye of the World. We are adapting the entire series. And so, they have a certain number of episodes. Let's say that they do get to 8 seasons, which I think is kind of the goal. That's only 8 episodes per season. Maybe we get lucky and the show starts to get 10 episodes per season. But still, that's not a lot of time to tell Robert Jordan's epic story. And so I think that you're absolutely right that this is meant to be rewatched. Okay, we could talk about this forever. In interest of time, let's talk quickly about the other deleted scene. Now we have to be a little bit careful about how we talk about this. I don't know if you guys were able to see it at WoTCon. Because this has not been revealed to the public, we want to be respectful. We don't want to just give away everything. I'm hopeful that they'll release it soon. My guess is that they're saving it for another What Wednesday or something, just so that they can spread it out a little bit. But this scene is in the opening or in the first episode. It was just cut extremely short. There's more to this scene than what we got in the first episode. And to me, of the 2 scenes that they showed us, these deleted scenes, this is the one that I'm most upset they removed. And the reason is it's short. It really helps establish Tam and Rand's relationship and Egwene and Rand and Tam. And it gives a little bit of insight into Tam's backstory with his wife. So I was really saddened to lose this scene. So just very quickly, let me summarize what happens here. Just like in the episode, Egwene comes up to Tam and she says, "Too early for breakfast." And then Tam says, "Never too early for your mom's bread." And then they have a little bit of a conversation. In the show, she looks at him and he looks back at her and he says, "He left before I woke," implying that she's wondering where Rand is. And then it cuts. That's it. That's all we get in the show. So quick, you almost miss it. It's such a quick scene. And by the way, there was a leaked script for episode 1 that came out, I think maybe even before the season came out. And it has this scene in it almost word for word. And so this is something you can go and find. But essentially, this is what happens. They have a little conversation. Tam mentions that his wife knew and loved Egwene as a baby. He asks if Egwene remembers his wife at all. Egwene says, "I remember her eyes. They're blue like Rand's, and she had red hair." And then Tam mentions that there was a fire and that the inn burned down. And he says, "When that happened, they brought you as a baby to our house to take care of you while they were rebuilding the inn, so to speak." And he says, "My wife loved you. She would spend all day with you, playing with you, holding you as if you were her own daughter." And then Egwene says, "You must miss her so much." And then Tam says this. He says, "Of course I do. But there's something about death that's clean, final. And a clean cut, even if it's 3 times as deep, will always heal better than something ragged, something messy and raw. And you have his heart." Oh, he says, "You have his heart in your hand, girl. Be gentle with him. He's all I have." And that scene in particular, that was it. Then it cuts away. The moment that Michael McElhatton, the actor who plays Tam, says, "Be gentle with him. He's all I have," he gets teary-eyed, and you can just see the love of a father for his son. And in my opinion, this was one of the connections that was missing in the pilot episode, was just seeing that really wonderful connection between Rand and Tam. We do get some of that later, but it's just him sort of getting teary-eyed and being like, "I love him so much," it was really great
Right.
for me. So that's
And
the scene.
you mentioned it, I think on the Dusty Reel show. Fans needed to see him being somebody other than Bolton,
Yes.
right?
Oh,
And it was super important that, especially fans that had already known the story, identify him as this loving, strong, caring father. And that would have been a really great, and it's a super short scene, so there's really no reason to. And I think you guys even mentioned, like, the episode itself was actually a little bit short, like, so there was definitely time to leave it in there. So I don't understand the point of, like, you keep that in there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I completely
there
agree.
was so much in that scene that I really loved. One of the things that I really loved was the sort of duality, the change between the book and the show. So in the books, we see Rand have a conversation with Egwene's mom, and we know that, Rand's that Marin Alvear would be like, trying to find a wife for Tam and trying to, get Egwene together with him. So it was nice to have that swapped. And now we're seeing that Egwene and Tam have also spoken before, because it just stands to reason that they would. I do love that she mentions what Rand looks like, because later on, when Tom says that it's, oh, red hair is really weird, the audience already knows that, like, but his mom had red hair too. So, like, whatever. It may not, it doesn't really stick out as much with that. I also really love, like you said, that it shows how much he loves Rand, and how much he cares about Rand. And then it also sort of puts the ball in Egwene's court, and it adds a little bit more tension for, like, what she knew she was going to have to say to him later.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Oh, man. Well, and they talk a little bit about a fire, which is interesting because this is the second time, apparently, that the Wine Spring Inn has burned down in this episode. They mentioned one in the past when Egwene was a baby and when she was taken care of by Tam and Cariel Thor for a summer. I've talked about this before, and you probably heard this, but one of the theories that was brought up at WoTCon that I really liked is that the Coffins, Abel and Natty Coffin, may have been involved with causing that fire or something. Maybe someone died in the fire, and this is why they're struggling as they are at the beginning of episode 1, which I thought was really interesting. My opinion is, of those characters, just as the village will need to rebuild the inn and the village, so will they themselves need to sort of rebuild themselves. And I think we still will be seeing a redemption arc for people like Natty and Abel Cawthon, right? I can't wait. I really hope, this is sort of spoilery for book 4, so if anyone hasn't read up to book 4, but I can't wait when we go back to the Two Rivers and Natty and the girls have been kidnapped by the White Cloaks. I love the idea that Abel is now like, this is my family, I'm going to fight for them, and he joins Tam in the wilderness. I really hope we still get that, and I actually think that's more powerful considering where we left them, and considering that he now cares for his wife and daughters in a way that he hadn't been, and we get to see that redemption. I also think it'll be great for Natty to see him rescue her and really go the lengths that he does in the books to save his family. So
and the whole village, right? The whole Two Rivers folk in general, that
right,
they all kind of had like their dicks knocked in the dirt, right, from the trolley coming in. And there's a redemption arc for the whole town later on.
Absolutely. Well, and I also like the idea that as they rebuild the village, they're looking to rename it. And Perrin comes along and shares the Weep for Manetheren story with them, and that's when they decide to name it Aemon's Field. I really love that idea.
But actually Aemon's.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. Aemon's Field, yeah. I think that would be
that would be really cool.
Really awesome.
I also really like that this sounds funny to say, that the inn burned down before. And not to say that I'm happy it burned down, but because in the books, we get Rand's sort of inner monologue saying, yeah, well, our people stay here. We stay through everything. If our crops mess up, if this messes up, we stay, we rebuild. And that kind of gives us that idea, like, yeah, they stayed and they rebuilt. They could have moved elsewhere. Like, why would you want to stay here? But they didn't. And I feel like it falls back to that a little bit in the books.
Oh, that's great. And maybe that version had the 12 chimneys that we missed in the show.
Yeah. Or maybe that's why it burned down. Too many fires.
Too many chimneys, yeah.
Too many.
Oh, that's great. Any other thoughts about this scene? I mean, one other thing I do like to point out, and okay, so spoilers again. I'm trying to be vague, but if you haven't read all the way to the end of the last book, this might be a little spoilery. So, Darian, you might want to cover your ears. Just the way he talks about death and everything to Egwene, I thought was very powerful. And again, it's just one of those little things that I think is a beautiful foreshadowing for later. That I'm so sad that they didn't include this in the show, because this is, to me, is a better, more masterful version of backstory and foreshadowing without being heavy-handed.
Yep.
Awesome.
I agree. I would have liked. I definitely see the value of the one they kept, but I would have liked the cutscene, because of there's so many different layers in it. Whereas the one that we got, it adds a little more excitement and action to a first, right? To a pilot of a show that needs to have, enough to keep people going.
Yeah.
But yeah, this cutscene, the cutscenes that we've seen together so far, they still don't amount to a whole lot of time. Yeah, and I think it's unfortunate that they cut it. I would rather see this should have been included, because it's it is just over 1 minute long anyway in total. And the other scene that we previewed and talked about, there's just a lot more information packed in there. There's a lot more symbolism that works with the story, and setting things up, than the original one that we got. That it shows the action or the essence of connecting with the power.
Absolutely. Yeah, it makes me wonder what else was on the cutting room floor. Because I also feel that the second half of the episode was super fast paced with the attack on Winter Night, and all the Trollocs, and I loved a lot of that action. But I do also feel like that was choppy, and that there were things removed. Specifically, a scene we see later in episode 7 when Rand is revealed to be the Dragon Reborn, and we get a little bit of those flashbacks of Rand in the forest with his father after he's been injured and trying to make it back to the Two Rivers. I'm really saddened that they didn't just have a little bit of that in the pilot episode. They didn't need to hear what he said. They didn't need to show much more than just Rand trying to help him through the forest, hearing him mumble and being like, what? And then maybe having him hand him the sword. I think that would have been all we needed. To me, that would have been a better bookend for later. But yeah, who knows? Who knows what else was cut, and if we'll ever see it, if any of it will make the light of day, right? So, oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think a lot of it has to do with, I think a lot of those cuts and changes were more kind of like they're probably Amazon induced.
Yeah.
More than the showrunner induced. As much as people like to try and blame Ray for everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the other point I was gonna say is, as far as the flashbacks and everything, I didn't get a good chance to hit on it during the panel. So hopefully it's another thing we can talk about sometime in the future, is that I honestly believe there's a number of things Darian knows what I'm talking about, because we talked about on a couple of hours that we were driving to the con, that we are going we're probably still going to see a lot of things that we wish that we saw, that we think that we've kind of assumed at this point we're not going to see in kind of flashback moments. I mentioned during the panel, so I'll mention those here now. the Tom that we're used to seeing. I believe that we will see a snippet of that Tom in a flashback of Camelin. I don't think it's gonna be an add-on. I think that's already in the plans, and that we just kind of assumed that, no, they're screwing Tom up.
Yeah, right. I love that idea.
I believe the War Cloak will show up later on in the show.
Well, and he does have the patches in the show. They're just underneath the cloak. They're kind of hidden. And
I'll mention it briefly.
It's like inside. Yeah.
Right.
Isn't he wanted for like 2 regicides?
Yeah. Well, at some point, yes.
Not yet.
One at the start, right?
Right. So one right at the start. Like, so I mean, like, he should not look like he should look. Otherwise, he would be in jail. He would be in Andor's prison or whatever. Like,
yeah.
Like it's.
Is the regicide thing later? I'm trying to remember what the two are.
Technically, there's one that happens before the story, and then there's one that happens later. But I do like that, because Moraine later, says to him, like, "Oh, the arrogance of using the same name." Like, so it makes sense if he got a little bit of a different look, but then still kind of got his gleaming thing on the inside.
Yeah, good point. Well, and another thing, I've often wondered, what was Tom doing in that village? You could say he was just wandering around, kind of keeping low, but it almost seems like he latched onto to Matt and Rand very quickly, almost as if it could be to Viren. Certainly, that's definitely a big part of it. Like he knew the pattern knew he needed to be there at the time he needed to be there, but also in that village that village is interesting. It's like a mining village, but did you notice what they're mining? It's like ancient artifacts. It's like 1 power stuff. And so I wonder too if that village will play into anything in the future at all, or if that will matter at all, or if that was just a fun little Easter egg. I don't know.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this has been an awesome discussion. I think we're going to cut this off pretty soon here. Thank you guys for coming and for participating with me. This is not enough time to talk about all the things I want to talk about, and I talk so much, and I apologize for that, but I just get so excited having these kinds of conversations, and people are going to always be critical of the TV show or of Rafe, but there is just so much to unpack from all of this, and I'm just hopeful that we can continue to do it for years to come, right? That's the hope. So I really appreciate you guys and your thoughts and input. Chad, I want to hear your story about Kate. You got to tell Kate and Michael before we go.
Do you want me to tell before we go?
Yes, please.
So how I met Kate. So it actually took place. Yeah, it took place before the panel I missed. We were outside talking. I was talking to Big Gay Will and a couple other people, our Twitter pals, and Kate came out, and all of a sudden everybody either stopped talking and just like veered and over, or we're still talking, but just like just kind of like just gravitationally pulled towards her. She was talking to Seth and some other people really kind of close by, and so I kind of smiled, but then I kept our conversation going because it was a good conversation. And everybody was only half in this conversation, obviously, because Kate was sitting there. And then then you've talked to Kate, so like the conversation gets it gets kind of loud and boisterous and fun. And kind of like on a whim, I turn around like, "Hey, Redding, will you please quiet down? I'm having a conversation over here." I started turning around, and I'm not sure if she kind of like grabbed my arm or what, but she came at me and she's kind of like, and that's how yeah, and I kind of laughed. I'm like, listen, honestly, I was just trying to find some way to intervene in your guys' conversation so I could talk to Kate Redding too. I said, "So I'm sorry, you guys," and then she gave me a hug, and then I said. That I said, so listen, I wanted to break in this conversation just to be able to say, like, in case you and Michael don't work out, I just want you to know, like, I'm available. My wife would definitely not agree with that availability, but then, we all laughed.
Probably not, yeah.
That's so great. And that's another thing I loved about Kate in particular. She was kind of like in the know with all of the jokes. She was just having a great time with everybody and laughing, and yeah, they did a matching game or something in one of the panels, and Michael and Kate's answers during the matching game were always really funny and well thought out. So Well,
And
awesome.
you know, looking back, I'm so glad that was taken in the spirit that it was given, because very often things like that, you know, kind of aren't. And that would have just been horrible. Like literally everybody at the counter would have been like, "Boo!" every time I walked by. That's the guy who yelled at Kate.
And the fact that she just embraced it was great.
Yeah, she totally flipped me off. I'm just like, and she's like, you know, like 3'11". I'm not sure her exact height, but she's
Short.
small and unimposing. Barry shaking his head like maybe not, maybe 4'11".
I say
I
like,
don't know.
yeah,
Small.
she's probably around 5 feet, I bet.
But she gets big. She can get big. She can come at you with her little
just
frame
like Moraine, right? She
Oh,
really
yeah.
she really is Moraine.
Moraine, yeah.
Yours
I
is not
also
approved by description.
I just also want to quickly shout out Daniel Green as well, because we had a great chat with him by the bar. He actually bought me and my fiance a drink to celebrate our engagement because we were engaged the
Oh.
week before WoTCon. So
Congrats.
shout out to
That's
Didn't know
great.
that. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Great. Like Daniel Green was just a pleasure. The little I got to talk to him, he was great. He's just one of us, isn't he? It's fun to see that. Darian, any last words before we go?
Yeah, I guess before we go too far, before we go, I just want to say that yeah, please do check out the Spare Time, and the website is due to change here in just a couple of weeks. Before, we've been a lot more of like a private seller, like you'd reach out and have a commission artwork done or ask for a specific print, but pretty soon it'll be a storefront where everything will be much easier and much more accessible for you to privately get on and just pick out what you like and have it sent to you like you were ordering it from, you know, Amazon. I also wanted to shout out Rob, his maps there. I wanted to say it earlier.
Oh, yeah.
But he had done like full-size maps and a number of the entire world, and they were just so high quality. And I talked to him about his process, and it was clear that like a lot of like intention went into it. And so I think he's Rob the Designer on maybe on Twitter.
Yeah, and also Weekly Wheel News. He's well known. Yeah.
Yep, and just really impressive stuff. Really good.
Thank you. I'm glad you pointed that out. And speaking of Rob, I'm supposed to be live streaming weekly. That kind of got away from me. We have our own podcast that we've been trying to start. It's more like a live stream podcast called They Might Be Dark Friends. And hopefully we will be back, if not next week, very soon. Excited to connect with him as well. And yeah, so thank you guys so much for being here. I will be sure to put your contact info and stuff in the description of the video. I don't think it's there yet, but I will put that in. But yeah, this has been a great discussion. Let's do this more often.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invite.
And before we go, Lauren, I want to shout out your channel as well. It's awesome. If people here are not subscribe. I literally made my mom watch all of the WOT 101. It's amazing. It's so detailed. It's awesome.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Course.
And a lot of big stuff coming. My episode 8 Unraveled video is almost finished. I'm almost finished with the writing, and the video will come together pretty quick. My big full season review, which if I'm being honest, scared to do, but I've been working on that, and I have a lot of thoughts, so that one's coming. Then I hope to pivot away a little bit from show related stuff and get back into some of my deep dives and book related stuff, but I literally have a list of about 20 videos I need to get out before the next season, so hopefully I don't keep taking 6 to 8 weeks to make a video. So but thank you, I appreciate that.
They're worth the wait. It's no accident. There's no accident that people keep pointing new viewers and readers to your show as a first, because I mean, it's just my opinion probably, but it's the best one.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that. Everyone is awesome. I do hope that the quality of my content stands out as what they call evergreen content. That's what I'm going for. Stuff that people can refer back to. I got a message just the other day from Critter, and she was like, I was just Googling something about the Wheel of Time, and your video was the first thing that popped up, and that was really exciting for me. So that's my goal, help educate new fans and remind old fans. But anyway, this isn't about me. This is about you guys and the Wheel of Time. Thanks for being here. I'm going to sign off. I don't have some cool, catchy sign off like Matt does, so I'm just going to click on the sign off page and say goodbye. So thank you guys.
Bye. Thank you guys. Bye. Thanks for having us.
All right.